That's part of the problem. It wasn't, he didn't tell me this secondhand. I saw it. And then the kids looked, like James looked right at me. And it was like, that was the cry for help. And that's where we're supposed to be there. And what's the right decision? So let me pause story. What's the right decision? What do you think?
I don't think there is one. This other kid was standing right there, and for whatever reason, and the kid was bigger than him, just front kicks him right to the chest as I'm standing there. And I was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And then I looked around for the the aides and, "Hey, what's going on with this kid?" And they're like, "Oh, we're already writing up a report on him, but we'll make another note of it." Well, thanks, but I just got Muay Thai kicked. My kid just got Muay Thai kicked to the front of the
Yeah.
chest, and
Welcome to the Advisor Dads podcast, where family, finance, and real life collide. We're two financial advisors and full time dads sharing stories, lessons, and strategies to help you make smarter decisions for your family and your future. Whether you're navigating retirement, raising kids, or just trying to make sense of the financial world, we've got you covered. Ben Tusky is a private wealth advisor and the vice president of financial planning at Sunpoint Investments. Dave Rath is a wealth advisor and the chief investment officer at Continuum Wealth Advisors. The views shared in this podcast are our own and don't necessarily reflect those of Sunpoint Investments or Continuum Wealth Advisors. Seriously, don't make financial decisions just because two dads with a microphone sound convincing. Talk to a professional that knows your situation. Some securities or strategies discussed may be holdings or recommendations for clients of Sunpoint Investments or Continuum Wealth Advisors. All right, let's get into it.
hello and welcome back. Today, we are going to be talking about a situation in both of our lives where we as dads have had to confront the aspect of bullying with our kids, despite the fact that our kids are still young. It starts early, and we're going to be talking about how we deal with it, thoughts around how we got to this situation, what are the appropriate steps to take, how do you avoid going to jail as a father. So, with that, here is my co host, Ben Tusky. Ben, tell us about what happened at Field Day.
First, we have to start at the fact that Dave didn't know who the Kakembas were, or who the legendary G Baby was.
As a guy,
I know,
I'm
that's why I was
embarrassed.
like, I wore it for you, but here we are.
Yeah.
And the other thing that we have to touch on later in the episode is I followed through with the Rocket Money thing on the previous episode. I also, my wife and I are now watching a show on Apple TV because of you and Monique.
Which
So
one?
we've got a, that's a good question. I don't know what it's, oh, Shrinking, the Shrinking or Shrinking?
Shrinking. I've never
Shrink.
watched that one. It's on the list though.
All right. I saw episode one. I laughed so hard. I woke my Mary Kate fell asleep mid episode. I was shaking the bed because I was laughing so hard. So I in dip my toe in the Apple TV thing because I got my thanks mom. She had her account logged into our room because she stayed here a few times. So
Wait, does
that
this mean
was
that you've never seen Ted Lasso?
I've never seen Ted
Oh
Lasso.
my God, that should be
I've
number
seen so
one.
many like good I've seen so many like good clips of Ted Lasso, but and being like a soccer guy, like it's that obviously should check some boxes. But I also don't watch a ton of, I just don't watch a ton of TV or like TV shows in general. So that's that's part of it. But Ted Lasso will be on the list now that we have Apple TV loaded on here. So
Yeah, big.
all right, so trying to stay out of the orange jumpsuit. I always listen to. I remember this scene in one of Rogan's podcasts where he's on with Bill Burr and they're talking about this clip of the guy's wife and daughter like holding up a sign like protesting on a bike path or something like that. And this guy who's on his like racing bike in his track outfit like yanks the sign out of his daughter's hand. But I don't think the dad was there. And like you could see Joe Rogan getting like teary-eyed just and he had said to Bill Burr, "Yep, I'd be in an orange jumpsuit. Like I'd be like." And Bill Burr's comedic relief there of Joe, relax. Like this didn't happen to you. Like you're going to a dark place, and that's just it. And I think when I saw that clip, I hadn't experienced anything with the kids yet where there was like blatant bullying. Not, we always run into the things where it's like things are incidental or accidents. So, you have to, nobody needed to step in, or you just need to remind people that it was an accident. You're playing kind of rough. But I was at James Field Day a few weeks ago, and it's kind of a free for all. It had rained, so it had rained out the previous one, so they had to delay it. And you could tell there was just it's a bunch of 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year. It's a panic anyway. It's just chaos. So there's a couple kids in his class that we we try to get him to stay away from. We just know like when you're with them, bad things happen. Just just stay away. Well, some kid was trying to take something out of his hand while they were standing in line, and James, I guess, dropped it on the ground, and the kid just closed his fist, and from like here to my face, like punched him in the face, right in the cheek. And you see, I felt like Joe Rogan. You see red.
You watched it all unfold.
Oh, yeah, exactly, and that's part of the problem. It wasn't. He didn't tell me this secondhand. I saw it, and then the kids look. They like James looked right at me, and it was like that was the cry for help. And that's where we're supposed to be there. And what's the right decision? So let me pause story. What's the right decision? What do you think?
I don't think there is one.
Yeah, me neither.
Before getting into my story of the day and the week, that similar thing happened to me when Michael was probably about 3. At daycare, I picked him up and I crouched down to say hi to him, and this other kid was standing right there. And for whatever reason, and the kid was bigger than him, just front kicks him right to the chest as I'm standing there. And I was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And then I looked around for the the aides, and hey, what's going on with this kid? And they're like, "Oh, we're already writing up a report on him, but we'll make another note of it." Well, thanks, but I just got Muay Thai kicked. My kid just got Muay Thai kicked to the front of the chest,
Yeah,
and for no reason. Like there was no obvious like conflict that
yeah,
was going on. So I mean, you go to some really dark places in your head, and realizing that it's just like a 5-year-old in front of you.
yeah. And I know, and that's exactly it. Is like all of the things that go in your head, though. Like even as Michael got kicked, it's two wrongs happen there, where it's like you either do nothing and you feel like you just left Michael out to dry, or you duff that kid in the chest and then you're in some serious trouble. And that's where I felt at a loss. And the kid locked eyes with me, and I was just like, I felt like verbal was like gonna keep me out of jail. So I was just like, what are you doing? I watched what you just did. Why did you do that? And of course, like his James teacher and like the aide are like trying to corral all the kids. You could see they're like sweating like crazy. And I was like, I don't care. I know this is only going to add stress to the situation. So I was just like, went right to his teacher. Was like, yo, here's what just happened. And I am expecting something to be done about this.
Were his parents
She,
there?
no, no, but his parents were at like the graduation next to me or near us today. And how usually you can see like other parents and be like, yep, I get it. That makes sense. There's a kid in his class where it's like, you see dad and you're like, yeah, that fits. That shoe fits really well. This didn't fit. I'm not really sure what's going. Obviously, everybody can put on their best front when they're out in public, but I'm not sure what's going on there because parents seem like pretty normal. But this kid, full on troublemaker, and the teacher was like, he is always doing something. And it's hard because then you're like, at what point do you remove him?
Yeah.
He's disrupting the class, and I get it because this is a Catholic school, and you have these like daycare, they're paid institutions. At some point here, though, you've got to step in. So I don't know if I handled it right,
Did you
handled it
mean
wrong.
mugs the whole
The
ceremony?
you size up dad, and you're like, all right, he's a little bit bigger than I am, so like but yeah, it was one of those things where when I was like standing on the side videotaping James for like them to sing, I was like, if he turns to say anything to me, I'm 100% bringing this up and just be like, hey, oh, you're his dad. 2 weeks ago, your son struck my son in the face on purpose because you probably know this from Michael and Daniel. Like the school's not allowed to tell you who did it for privacy reasons, I mean, your kid's gonna pretty much rat them out right away, or you get to see him get front kicked in the chest, like you saw it live. So it's it's so infuriating. And it's hard because, and I'm sure you and Monique are the same way. Of I'm not going to raise this bully or jerk of a kid. Like we are very, very quick to shut that down and to like over-index the punishment for, said bullying attempt or actions. Of you cross that line where we feel like you're bullying, no, like you're in timeout right away. There's no warnings.
Let's fast forward a couple years, and the school principal calls you and says, so and so started a fight with James. James really hurt the kid defending himself. What do you do as a dad?
Probably have to show up to school to pick up James and just I'll play the role of, hey, I'm concerned for that other kid and hopefully he's okay. And obviously, my son was just defending himself. Those were your words, not mine. And then we get in the car and I give James a high five and say, hey, look, you shouldn't take anything from anybody. You have to make smart decisions, though. This is not the answer for anything else. This is purely to defend yourself in a physical situation, and that is it. So if it is truly that, fine. If he took a swing at somebody, I don't think we probably should resort to physical ever unless you're in a defensive situation.
There was a comedian, I can't remember who, but they said that most of the problems in the world today exist because we can't settle disputes with a fist fight anymore.
Yeah.
And it's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true because people just now have complete freedom to do or say whatever they want and realize that if you punch them or you hurt them in an altercation, then they can sue you, or their
Right.
daddy, the lawyer, can sue you. And it's like, just get in a fist fight and get your teeth knocked out and you won't do that again.
Yeah. I think people would, if we lived in a society where getting punched in the mouth for saying something like absolutely obscene, yeah, people would. I don't know. I'm right outside Philadelphia, so if you're at the Birds game and you want to do something like that, like Philadelphians are going to just throw a swing at you. They don't really care about getting in trouble. So, yeah, I mean, maybe if that stuff happened, more people would be a little bit nicer to each other and more mindful of the words that come out of their mouths.
As a Giants fan, don't get me started on Eagles fans. We know your reputation, okay?
Yeah, well, we just keep it that way in the city. I don't go to the city very often, so maybe that is representative of how I feel as well. But if you show up in these colors, you're usually pretty safe.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't find me dead in those colors, so.
I'm gonna ship you a Kemba's jersey. I have an extra one. It's gonna be a little bit big, but this way you'll represent.
Yeah, well.
All right, go ahead, fire away. You're the one who started this with the
Yeah,
Texas week,
and
where I thought I was gonna have to come get you from jail.
Yeah, I texted you right after it happened. It was about a week and a half ago, and the backdrop is Monique wanted a day to work in the yard and in her garden, so I said I'll take the boys to the mall. It wasn't great weather, as it hasn't been in upstate New York for basically forever.
Right.
And at the mall, there's an aquarium that we have family pass to, but there's also right outside the aquarium, there's an arcade and a bouncy house. And my kids obviously want to go to those things first. So we did the arcade, had a great time. Then we ended up in the bouncy house. And right on the entrance, it says for kids 1 through 8. And so I'm sitting there keeping an eye on my kids, and these two teenage boys, I would guess probably 12 or 13, they run in, kick their shoes off, and jump into this giant bouncy house. And it ran through my mind that I should probably say something to them and be that guy, but then I decided not to be that guy. So I just sat there and continued, monitoring my kids. Well, I can't really see them from where I'm at because it's like there's this big inside portion that is unavailable to be seen from the outside. And I'm sitting there and Daniel comes out. Daniel's my older one. And he said, Dad, those two big kids in there are pushing all the little kids. So right away, my blood pressure is through the roof. And I said, are you serious? And he says, yeah, the one kid pushed me really hard. So I said, okay, this is the end of that. So I waited until they got to an area where I could say something to them, where they weren't like buried inside the bounce house. And I said, "This is for little kids, 8 and under. What are you guys doing in here?" And the one kid said, "I'm 9." I said, "No, you're not." I said, "Where's your wristband? You didn't pay to get in here." He says, "It's in my pocket." I said, "Okay, put it on." He said, "I don't have to do what you tell me." So I said, "Okay, do you want me to go get management or not?" And so they go, "Oh, fine." And then they walked out. And then they try to sneak back in. So I like kind of poke my head and get out of here. So I sit back down, and the one kid, the bigger one, he just looks at me, and earmuffs for any kids listening. He goes, "Fuck you, bitch." And I just let him have his parting shot, right? I just like, all right, I'm not going to escalate this situation. I'm just going to let this go. But then he just kept at it. He was just standing there staring at me saying, "You pussy bitch, fuck you." Would not stop. And so now I'm simultaneously juggling in my head the fact that my son is there watching this unfold, that there's other parents there also watching this unfold, and wanting to murder this person in front of me. So I told him, "You better be careful who you talk to that." He says, "Why? What are you going to do about it?" So now I am a pacifist. I don't like these types of situations at all. But I stepped to him and just got right in his face. And right when I did that, he said to his friend, he said, "He's going to punch me. Look, everybody, he's going to punch me." And I said, "I'm not going to punch you. Just get out of here. My kids are here. Get out of here." So he continued talking his shit as he left. But I mean, I'm fired up right now just retelling the story because it was a no-win situation for me.
Right.
And I feel like I maneuvered enough around there to the point where got my kids out of there safe. I just got them and said, "We're going," because I didn't want to run the risk that there was going to be any sort of retaliation from these kids. And then I really would have had to do something.
Right.
But ever since that episode, I have murdered that kid roughly 1,000 times in my brain in various ways. And it's been very satisfying to think of what I could have done to him. But it was shocking, and I don't know what the right answer is to your point, and I think I did an okay job. And then I was able to use it as a teaching moment later on in the day. I took Daniel aside and said, "Do you see how I stuck up for you?" I said, "Always stand up for yourself." I said, "You did the right thing coming to get me," because he was much bigger than you.
Right.
But you always stand up for yourself. Don't let anybody push you around. And I won't let anybody push you around. And so it kind of opened up a conversation about sticking up for yourself and defending yourself. And I mean, I'm glad nothing happened, because the worst possible scenario is I get led away in cuffs and then my sons have to watch me get arrested. But
Yeah.
man, it was very interesting. And I texted Monique after it happened. I said, "I almost got in a fight with some teenagers." She goes, "What? Are you serious?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'll tell you the story later," but it
Yeah.
was wild.
It's right. So I think it's the no-win situation. You feel somewhat helpless and that you're just going to make the wrong decision. And that's the part that's inherently sucks about it. And it's, yeah, what are you going to do? Duff that kid? And you're going to, yeah, you're obviously going to get in some serious trouble for that. But, and you can only ignore it for so long. And especially when they're using foul language like that, especially in front of a 6-year-old. Yeah, I mean, that stuff is, it's really tough. Yeah, I mean, I think you played it as best you could. There's no right answer. I mean, I think the right answer is, not getting involved in it. And, but these days, like when these teenagers want to do what they want to do, I mean, it's a big reason that I was talking the other day with neighbors. We go down to Wildwood. Now there's a curfew in Wildwood. That's because of teenagers partying on the beach and doing, and like starting fires and stuff like that. Well, you start to wonder, like, where are your parents? I like,
That's
when
always
I
the
was
answer. It's the
10, 11,
parents.
12,
It is the
where
parents.
I didn't go out on my own though.
No, and you said before you can kind of identify the parents, whether fair or not, and match it up with the kid. And everything that we talk about on this podcast has to do with parenting, and it is a failure of parents if your kid turns out like that. I do not care what else goes on in your life. If your kid ends up to the point where they're 12 or 13 years old and they're saying stuff like that to an adult for simply sticking up for his kid who didn't want his 6-year-old to get pushed by a 12-year-old, there is something seriously wrong with that house environment. And then it's
Sure.
just going to be a never-ending cycle. That kid is going to get older, probably have some kids that he neglects, and they're going to turn out to be terrible people as well.
Yeah, because I mean, it's you just think when that stuff happens, if mom and dad are there and there's a healthy home environment, like they're not gonna stand around and let that happen. It's just crazy to me.
And back to what I said before, if that kid thought for a second that I could punch him in the face without getting arrested, there was no way that he would ever say that to somebody else. And so I was almost leaning on my jujitsu training. For those who don't know, I've been doing jujitsu for a long time, and I could I could have put him in his place and just quickly taken him down, gotten him to a situation where I was on top of him, no strikes thrown, and I would have ended the situation like that. But even that carries some risks because then he could say, "Oh, I hit my head on the ground. I have a
Yep.
concussion now." And so I I never want to resort to violence. In fact, like I would actually prefer to move away from the situation because there's no good outcome where punches are being thrown or if something happens and the other person gets hurt. There's no good outcome like that. So I will always remove myself from the situation, but I could not physically remove myself from this situation at that time. And so I had to work my way through it in real time as other parents are watching and I also got the sense that, cell phones come out. There would be video of this.
That's what I
And
was thinking when you were saying this.
imagine
Like somebody
me in
pulls out a phone.
the face of my business ending up on the nightly news in a video of me beating the crap out of some teenager. Like there goes everything. Like I lose everything because of some words that were said.
Yeah. And that's where you know, you gotta let words be words and the because it feels unmanly to just like, walk away from the situation like that. But it is the right, like you're making the mature decision to say, I'm just going to get my kids to safety and I'm going to think about my family in this decision that I'm going to make. And so what that kid feels, okay, great, he got to say his thing. And I don't know, nobody's ever going to remember that other than like the people there that are going to be like, dude, I can't believe that teenager. It's also like crazy to think that no other adult stepped up to be like, I'm going to go grab a manager
Yeah.
while this situation, hey, and if nothing else, like you're a normal guy. What happens if he said that to like some lunatic? And somebody could have stepped in to prevent some catastrophic situation from happening. Yeah, I just think that the walk away method is the right route. Yeah, in those scenarios.
And we're at a situation now with our kids being young and they don't have access to phones or
Right.
social media. It is only going to get worse. And I know that there's no playbook that exists for raising kids, and there certainly is not one for dealing with bullying. And I would love some advice from you about how you're thinking about when that time comes that your kid is getting picked on online. Because it's going to happen. It happens to
Yeah.
everybody. And I don't know how I'm going to deal with it. And it's going to be like just a terrible experience all around.
Yeah, because like this wasn't a thing when we were kids, and even though we grew up in the MySpace slash early Facebook era, I don't digital bullying like I never even thought about it. I didn't even know that was a thing because I didn't even spend that much time online. But it's becoming obviously more and more prominent today, and the amount of times that kids spend on YouTube. And then, of course, I think like the big thing is going to be the texting, like the communication back and forth and the group chats. That's probably what I'm most concerned about. Whereas stuff that happens where there's like a digital footprint, I know is like always a risk, but if Susie from the class tweets out something that's like horrible about Avery, okay, well, there's a digital track record of that, and that's going to go to the school. That person's going to get in a ton of trouble. Versus, there's these just like the rumor mill lives in a group chat, and she's just getting told about. I think that's going to be the most challenging part of it. I don't I don't have a good answer for like how we're going to handle it, other than like how we're currently handling some of the situations that arise today, where it's just based on education and trying to remove ourselves from situations that don't involve us. We've had a situation, I think I might have mentioned it before, where there's a fourth grader that lives in the next neighborhood over who is a real jerk, and like he sits in the front of the bus because he gets in trouble so much. And we've had to have the communication, like the education for Avery of one, there's conversations that happen around you you don't need to be a part of. And like learning to kind of keep your mouth shut and not get involved in everything. Since we've done some of that, we've had no issues. Hey, sit in your seat, sit with the person that gets on the bus and sits next to you, like you have assigned seating, sit with your friend and you guys like talk. Outside of that, you need to let the other stuff be the other stuff and not get involved. And since we've done that, we haven't had any issues. So I think that's going to be some of it of because she can block it out currently. I know there's going to be a certain stage where like you can't. And I don't know, maybe as a parent we'll have to get more involved.
Do you talk to the other parents at some point?
If it So this scenario we were close where he like the fourth grader put his hands on Avery like to like just stop like on her shoulders to get stop her from getting off the bus at one point. But the principal had already been waiting for him. That's how much trouble this kid gets in. So I had reached out to the principal. I had never walked down to, but because no parent shows up to that bus stop for him. There's a surprise.
Yeah.
So, but in the digital age, if there's like a kid, yeah, I would, or I will. I'm sure that you're on LinkedIn or Twitter or Meta, some sort. I'm gonna be able to find you. Everything's public today. Like I'll be able to find a parent and just be like, hey, look, here's screenshots. Here's what's going on. You can fix this, or school's gonna fix it. And I would be mortified to get that text message if my kids were doing something like that.
I was telling this story to my sister, and she was saying that she had an incident where there was an issue with her daughter and another girl in school, and my sister and my brother-in-law reached out to the parents, were getting ignored. And then for some reason, the dad of the girl reached out to my sister rather than communicating back with my brother-in-law, saying, "Do not ever reach out to me about this stuff ever again. Not our problem." And so it just goes to show you that it is a cycle of terrible people, terrible
Yep.
parents, raise terrible kids. And to me, that type of stuff makes me think that confronting the parents won't really change anything. And it actually might make things worse for your kid, because now they're going to be the target of criticism and jeers saying you had to have your parents step in for you.
Yeah.
And so my goal is to raise kids that are self-sufficient, that are empowered to defend themselves, teaching them jujitsu, teaching them stuff that
Yeah.
we're not going to start a fight ever. Let me help you end it if you need to. That's going to be
Yep.
at least the way that I approach it. And what you said earlier, if I ever get the call, I have to pick up my kid from school because he got in a fight, and I can ask him if he started it or not. And if he did
Right.
not start it, then I'm going to give him a high five and say, you did the right thing. I don't care if you got suspended. You stick up for yourself. That's the way that the world works.
Yeah. I'm on the same page. I'm not saying I was like the nicest kid, but I was really small. Like I might have said this before on the podcast. I couldn't wrestle my freshman year of high school because I was like 4'11" and I weighed 80 pounds. And the lowest weight class is 103. Like I would weigh in, like I wrestled my freshman year, but I could weigh in for meets in my full sweatsuit and my bag on, and I still had 11 pounds to go.
And you had to meet the
And
minimum weight.
so this is pre-minimum weight.
Okay.
So because so many kids were over 103 in high school, I got a lot of like wins just based on they didn't have somebody to wrestle in that weight class. So I still had a record, but if I had, yeah, so like I was small, is what I'm saying, but I had two older brothers, and they both played lacrosse. Like we played lacrosse. So I had my older brothers like friends, and I'll never forget like this. His name was Kevin Knoll, and I'm still friends with his younger brother today. But these kids were like these juniors, I think, and I was a freshman, a really small freshman. I was like a sixth grader size, and they're like picking on me in the hallway. And Kevin grabbed both of them by their necks in front of me and was just like, if you ever effing talk, don't ever talk, don't even talk to him. Don't even look at him ever again. So I was just like the benefactor of having the right biggest people in the room where I didn't experience it as much, or I did and there was other people that stepped in. And like I said before, there was no the digital thing wasn't around. So I don't know, like my parents didn't have to get involved that often when it like for the bullying stuff. But I do, to your point, I do foresee just even what we've seen so far with both kids, there's instances that like we are going to have to get involved. Like we've had to get involved even when Avery was at daycare. You know, that kid got expelled, but that kid got expelled. Her older brother went to that daycare. He got expelled from the same daycare. It's like, obviously that's a parenting problem. And yeah, so you just continue this cycle, but we're going to run into it at every phase. There's going to be some kid doing something that is bad.
I was lucky, like you, I was small too, and I was the 112 pounder when I was a freshman. So
Nice.
haven't grown much in the height department since then, but put on some weight. And I was always lucky because I was on sports teams that I was never really picked on because of my size. Obviously, you get your natural ribbing from your teammates and
Yeah.
whatnot, and it's just part of life. But I was lucky enough where I never felt like I was the direct target of
Yeah.
bullying. And as he said, the digital world just opens it up. And Josh Brown had a post about this a little while ago where he had a birthday party for his 11-year-old daughter, and all the girls at the party started a group chat at the party without his daughter involved, talking about where they were going to go after because it was so boring at this party. And then his daughter found out about it at her birthday party and was crushed. And so it's just the new age of making somebody feel terrible about themselves. And, in our day, it was like getting stuffed in a locker or
Yeah.
not harmless stuff because it's still all of it's terrible. But
Yeah.
now it's just very pointed, anonymous a lot of times. And
Yeah.
everybody can hide behind a screen, everybody can hide behind a keyboard and make somebody's life miserable. So the best thing I feel like that we can do as dads and parents is just be there for your kid, coach him through those moments, realize that it's not all going to be middle school and high school, and you're going to grow up, become a successful person, and look at that person being a failure in life, and that's going to be your revenge.
Yeah. I mean, it's revenge is the best revenge is success on your own. And I think, yeah, staying vigilant and education and I don't know, in our house, it's like delay that phone as long as possible. We know that in some near future it's going to happen for communication with sports and stuff, but delaying that as long as possible. But again, I think staying vigilant of, hey, we have to keep an eye out for some of these red flags. And I don't know what I would do if I was in Josh Brown's situation. I'd probably have blown a gasket and been like, "Oh, you get the F out of my house." And like right now, don't care. Get out, get off my property. And but yeah, I mean that's like crushing. Now you got to go talk to your 11-year-old who's supposed to be their special day, and then it would be like, "Hey, those are really not your friends."
Yeah.
That's I know this is crappy in the moment, but this was the quickest lesson to learn that none of those people care about you. It's time to find new friends. So,
Well,
yeah,
we'll
stay
have to
vigilant.
revisit this episode in a few years when our kids are older and we're dealing with new stuff on the
Yeah,
bullying front, but hopefully not too bad. It's something that I'm honestly dreading as a dad. So hopefully you and I can wade our way through those waters.
I think you'll have less of it because you have two boys, but
Yeah.
we shall see, I guess, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, this was not really fun because my heart rate is still elevated telling that story. But it was good to walk through it with you. And if anybody has tips for us in this arena, we'd love to hear it because it is such a minefield. And as we've mentioned today, we don't know what the right answer is. So any tips, leave us a comment and we'll respond back. We promise. We read all of it, even though we haven't gotten a comment yet. So be it first, give us a comment and we'll respond back.
We've got some that are about like AI trading
Bitcoin
forex.
trades,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's like I got
the
it.
usual.
I know that's yeah, nonsense. But yep, we'll see you in the comments. We'll take the advice. We'll see you next time.